Community Advisors RSR. My name is Raimundo Reyes, the host, and Eduardo Rodriguez from District 18, Rulat. He's a co-host. And our guest of honor today is George Rodriguez, an immigration attorney. And he's going to be talking about immigration and what's going on. Eduardo, bienvenido. Welcome. George as well. Welcome.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Our partner, Eduardo, is having some issues with the internet, so bear with us today. And we know we went to this winter storm, so we apologize for having
so my name is Eduardo Rodriguez, Deputy District. No doubt this is something having to do with the leftover probably of what happened last week. So, let's see. Okay.
All right. George, you like to present your...
I'm just going to have to kind of wing it here.
That's all right.
We'll try to get some here. Let's see. Okay, basically what we got going is we do have a great show tonight. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things having to do with immigration. We have a great guest on this because he sees it from two sides, from the political side and also from the attorney side, because it gives us the insight as to how government sees and how the private attorneys, the community of attorneys, how do they view this whole thing? For me, a lot of you already know that I used to be a deportation officer with immigration, so I will kind of try to speak from the officer's point of view and see how we get everybody to understand what is going on. George, I know that you have, especially when it has to do with our elected officials. Could you elaborate a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I think that what this administration realized, which we were afraid that they wouldn't, is that they were at a fork in the road when it came to policies and how they were going to handle immigration. And it really, we've gone through this history of very heavy enforcement policies, starting back in the Clinton administration, because we got to remember, it was Clinton that started, it was under the Clinton administration where they added the definitions of aggravated felons and all these things, and completely changed the act, the laws. I remember we were lucky because we started practicing. I started practicing in 1995, and the laws kicked in. They were passed September of '96. So it was great for me because I didn't have to learn the old law or erase that from my mind. I just had to learn the new law, which I had to learn new whatever it was that existed, right? And so you had the old folks, the old farts that were from the old guard, that couldn't get past the old law, and just couldn't sink in that no, this is the way it is today. And I think that's part of what we're seeing from government officials, is that we're seeing these new policies that are being implemented, especially the enforcement priorities. And we've gone from 4 years of the pendulum being way out to one end, and now we're seeing it, going out to the other end. But my point in all this is that I think that this administration realized if we're really going to make a difference, we almost have to throw what's been in existence, throw it out the window and start something new, so that we do have a safe and secure America, but it's also a welcoming America. And that's what we haven't had for decades. It was always about how many obstacles can we put, in the way for somebody to be able to immigrate legally. And what, and as a former CBP officer, you realize that a lot of these folks felt like they had to, it was almost like squatters' rights. Don't leave the country, because if you leave the country, you're going to lose your opportunity to fix. So, once you're in, you got to stay until something good happens. And the joke for us, when we practice immigration, is that, winning is losing slowly, because the more you can drag it out, you'd hope that eventually something would happen. And we kept waiting for immigration reform. It never happened. But, other things did, right? And so I think what this administration is doing, what people are having a hard time with, is that, look, they realize we got to start new, and we can't do it piecemeal. I think that was another decision they had to make. Are we going to do this poquito a poco, y primero vamos a empezar con esto y después con lo otro? Y, lo que estamos viendo es algo comprensivo, pero no lo quiero decir comprehensive immigration reform, because that's kind of become it's got a bad connotation to it. I think what this is, hey, we're going to start from scratch. We're going to do this right. And we're going to, make sure that people have an opportunity. The people who should immigrate are going to have an opportunity to immigrate. And it's not just, the 8-year path. There's so much more to it. The waivers that we have to file, the standard is just so high, when in things like asylum, the standard is so high that it's almost impossible. From a practical standpoint, from a business standpoint, as an immigration attorney, it got to the point where there was very little I could do for you. And, if you were an honest immigration attorney, you spent a lot of time, if you had 10 consultations in a day, I guarantee you that 7 or 8 were people that you had to say, look, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do for you. You're just going to have to wait and see, become a squatter and hope that something good happens. And hopefully this is the good that's going to happen.
Well, that's one of the things that we as government officials also had to deal with, is on the inside, we had a lot of limitations as well. We had to build literally working and get good working relationships with attorneys and nonprofits so that they could help us. I had many times I would call an attorney or I would call a nonprofit and have them help me with somebody who we needed to get out of detention because of either medical reasons, psychological reasons, VIPs. Sometimes we would find, VIPs amongst the people that we had there, and we needed to get them out safe.
Right.
So there was a lot of things that we. I think that the part that I had a problem with wasn't so much the law in and of itself. It was the work more coherent when we didn't have to do that.
Right.
I think the problem occurred when immigration allowed the what we call the special inquiry officers to be titled as immigration judges.
Yeah.
When they joined the judge corps, everything changed. Because from that point on, they wanted to be mediators, and that we still hours. I mean, I could still cancel. I could still, issue visas or whatever I want to do. I had power like it was unbelievable, but there was no working relationship with either side. So when we were trying to do something, the immigration court would step in. This formal atmosphere that required us to be very careful on how we, because we're going to be held to a higher accountability, and it's a shame because we could have done great things. This deal with the children in cages never would have happened. Never would have happened because we would have been able to go help us with that. And we had juvenile detention. We were working in and out as quickly as I personally did that. I would literally call up the council if I couldn't find anybody in the family. Ask council, are you, as a government official of your and of their country, are you willing to accept? We could. Court system that they put in place, it really hampered what we were trying to get done.
Well, and really, I mean, I blame a lot of what the damage that we've seen in the past 4 years, in the Trump administration, obviously. I mean, it got to the point where we really thought that the entire immigration system was going to collapse, that it was going to implode. And a lot of that, of what we saw, I'm going to address what you just talked about, because I've been practicing for over 25 years. And I remember when it used to be that I could call an officer and go, hey, listen, I know this guy is 21, but he's like, you're dealing like with a 15-year-old. And, we can't, I mean, he lives at home, type of thing. Here's the circumstances, can we get him a bond and get him out before he's in the system? And I go, yeah, we'll take care of that. And we had open communication. Over the past 4 years, they cut all that off. They would not meet with us. So little things, even at USCIS, it didn't have to deal with enforcement. Even at USCIS, if there was an issue, we couldn't talk it out. We couldn't give them the information and they couldn't give us a response. I remember up here, we had this huge issue where there was a chemical spill in the big mail distribution center for the post office here in North Texas. So we weren't getting anything and they weren't getting anything, except every once in a while I get a denial for something that I'd never received that they needed information on. And we're going, what's going on? And, we never got to talk to each other. So we didn't get to exchange, hey, by the way, we're not getting notifications. And they couldn't tell us, hey, by the way, we're not getting your filings. And, little things like that, or, hey, you got a rogue officer, who's doing these interviews and, he's making the attorneys sit in a corner and not talk and things like that, and really it's not about giving the non-citizen an advantage. It's about due process. It's about being fair, doing the right thing. And it's about us being able to do our job and them being able to do their job in a respectful way, and I think that 90%, maybe 95% of officers, that's what they would want.
Well, speaking for the
officers,
that's exactly.
And I think one of the things that we're seeing now is they're not calling it prosecutorial discretion, but that's what it is. When you get the ability to go, hey, we're not going to NTA this guy, hey, let's just give him a bond and cut him loose. We don't need to have this guy in detention. Under the Trump administration, we had one enforcement priority: pick them all up. If they come in contact with you, you got to arrest them, you got to process them, you got to detain them, and you got to put them, through the system. So of course that backlogged everything. It backlogged the courts. You had, overpopulated detention centers. You had people that were being detained because they got pulled over for a traffic ticket and couldn't produce a driver's license. And those people were getting deported. And you couldn't even get a bond, you have to go to a judge.
Well,
and what
No, I was going to say we did the same thing. I mean, we had in 1996 when we started all this under the Clinton administration, we did things that we arrested directly to federal court and started prosecuting for illegal entry and illegal reentry, and they were getting federal time. So, so we did that under the Clinton. Clinton was the one that told us to do that.
That's right.
And that carried over because once we started doing that, then the next thing, of course, is how do we deal with the potential outcome if something major happens, which it did, 9/11.
Right.
9/11 came along, and then the Bush administration, the law that was in place, and made it even stricter because now we had national security interests. But in so doing, have the attorneys security, you guys never had an opportunity to do anything. We could interview without you guys being present, and we were covered.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Government, DHA, right?
Yeah.
The deportation officer, we had the ability to control what was going on, even out in the field, because we would literally get calls at 2 o'clock in the morning from an assistant chief or what they call the field office supervisor and operations supervisor, and I just got this guy. He's, the guy says he's got that, and we would tell him yes or no. So we had, from the very beginning, we had that ability. In 2003, when we became DHS, so to speak, we went into 5 different agencies. And then if you think we don't talk before, we definitely don't talk now. And you have, literally, you know this, if I want to get a complete record of somebody right now, an immigration record, I literally have to do one, like, let's say, for instance, a guy came in E2 visa, and then he overstayed his visa. Okay, and they picked him up. Now he's in court. So I got to get one for EOR. I got to get one for the D. And if Border Patrol was the one that stopped him, I got to get one from CB. I have to wait months before I get a full picture. I did, and it's asinine the way the system is set up now. It's not designed to help whatsoever. And no matter what anybody says, the only thing that we can do is either go back to a officer or one division has total responsibility on the case, or we completely revamp the whole system. And I'm hoping for the revamp, because things are right now, it's tough, man.
Yeah.
When you have somebody who committed like tickets weren't in Sealy, Texas, that we ain't even seen or heard of, that's an aggravated felon.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I got that 40 years. I don't care. You're an aggravated felon. That is not right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and what people don't understand is that, for immigration purposes, if you're an aggravated felon, it doesn't mean.
Let me ask you this: based on what we see so far, go ahead.
Oh, you were breaking up. I was going to say, what people don't understand is that for an aggravated felony under immigration purposes, it doesn't mean that you used a knife or a gun or were violent or harmed somebody. It could be shoplifting. You get a 1-year probation. 1-year probation for shoplifting, you're an aggravated felon. And you could have a deferred adjudication, and they said, they go, yeah, but I'm not convicted because my lawyer said if I take this deferred, I don't have a conviction. Yeah, that's true for the state of Texas, but for immigration, you got a conviction. And now you're stuck with this. And he's like, but they told me I didn't have to disclose this. Yeah, not for anybody else, but for immigration, you do. And if you've got these old convictions, all the application asks, have you ever been arrested? Yes. And then you got to provide the disposition of it. And if you can't find it, they have to assume the worst, even if it's something minor, right? So that's been the system for decades.
Yes. In my part, I deal more like in the political side, and I'm hoping also for a change. And I'm hoping that there's
one of the things that we've got to correct somehow or another. We've got to be able to sit down with the other side
Yeah, one of the things that the Biden administration is proposing is redefining what's a conviction. So, for instance, using the deferred adjudication example that I just used, a deferred adjudication, because for the state of Texas is not a conviction, would not be considered a conviction for federal law either. And the other thing they're going to do is they're talking about bringing back, I don't know if you remember, Eduardo, the JRADs, Judicial Recommendation Against Deportation. They're looking at bringing those back as well and respecting those, so that if somebody goes before a judge, in a state court, the judge can say, you know what, I'm going to recommend that you not be deported, and the DHS officer can take that into consideration as to whether or not they put them in proceedings. And people don't understand, unless you've been in the system, that when you're accused of a crime, if you can't afford a really good attorney, you're not going to get justice. And I have to explain this to clients all the time. They go, but I didn't do it. And I go, but this paper says you did. So you did. I don't care what you tell me now, because now we're stuck with this. This is truth. Whether it happened this way or not, this is truth now. And now we got to deal with that. And a lot of times what happens is they get an attorney. An attorney says, hey, for $300, we'll plea you out. But if you want to go to trial, we'll go to trial. But it's going to be $3,000 or $30,000. And they don't have that kind of money. Ray, I think I cut you off.
Yeah, and
But yeah,
the public defender, same way.
Yeah, and if it's from experience and from comments that the community has made, if the government provides you with an attorney, that attorney is most likely not going to put an effort to try to resolve the case, and you're probably not going to get the best case scenario if you get like a private attorney and they will work for you. But the problem is that many people don't have the money to pay for that private attorney to handle that case. So that's one of the problems with the judicial system that we have.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that, when you get a court-appointed attorney, he's going to get paid the same, whether he pleads out or tries the case. So the best part, business-wise, the best thing for that attorney to do is plea you out and get it over with. The sooner it's over, he's going to get paid the same. So why drag it out? Why sit there for 6 months and try a case? Sad, but it's true.
And for this administration, what changes have recently happened that you see more positive? Go ahead, Eduardo.
Say that I have worked with other attorneys who are willing to do this Kentucky and work. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And I would get to understand that, you can't allow the plea bargain to be your only alternative. You can sit down and talk to the DA and tell the DA, look, in reality, you don't have a case. We know that. 90% of these plea bargains, they don't have a case on it. And, let's do this. If you're willing to drop the charges, I'll walk over the immigration right now and get a voluntary removal. We'll get him out of the country in 24 days or 24 hours or whatever. Without a conviction, this things, if not one of the most impossible things, and that is where we have a lot of people at this moment here in this country.
Yeah, and the hard part about the Padilla cases, because I've done several of those, the criminal attorney will do the writ, but I'll come in as the immigration expert. And the hardest part is realize that here you got a prosecutor who says, man, I've got a notch on my belt. You think I'm going to undo this conviction? So they'll fight it. And then you're basically accusing another attorney of being ineffective and not presenting all the options, right? And so what do they say? Oh, I presented all the options. Or I've had one just recently when they said, well, there were no witnesses, there was nobody to defend him. We had no, we got him the best deal possible. When we ended up with all the attorney's notes in his file, there was note after note. Client keeps asking me to talk to his wife. Client keeps saying, talk to his son, that they were witnesses, that and they never contacted any of them. And they charged them a ton of money. I mean, this wasn't a case where they did it on the cheap. They charged a ton of money and just didn't do his job. Oh, I think, Ray, you were asking me about the differences that we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. The differences that you have seen so far, and that and since you work in immigration and you have immigration cases, what's the difference? What's the impact that it has had directly this administration as of today, or since they took office?
Well, the one thing I would say that we were all surprised, by the way, in how far-reaching the Biden administration was in its immigration proposal. We were hoping for some of this, but we didn't think they were going to go this far, which is fantastic. But I think the biggest difference has been the tone that they have set. And what I mean by that, for instance, they are eliminating using the word alien to describe non-citizens. They're using non-citizens, and they want to change the Immigration Act to reflect non-citizens instead of aliens, so that now we're talking more about, they're humanizing them again, versus making them something that's not human, less than human. That's one thing. The other thing that is part of the policy right now, at least the interim policy, are the enforcement priorities. And so, as I was talking about earlier in the segment, under the Trump administration, we went down to just one priority. Anybody that they encountered who was not a citizen, they had to process. And so now what they're doing is they're saying, look, we've got limited resources. We can't put everybody in deportation proceedings. We can't, detain everybody. Let's go after those who are, number one, a threat to our nation or possible terrorists. Let's go after those who are more recent arrivals or have more recent removal. And that's really, more than anything, that's to avoid a rush to the border. And then finally, there's a presumption that we want to remove aggravated felons and people who are associated with gangs or gang members. So, and they're gonna fine tune that a little bit more. They're just giving Mayorkas, the DHS director, the ability to actually assess what he's got on his hands and be able to come with a more detailed policy. But for the time being, that's what is in place. And the other thing is, as Eduardo was talking about, we're finally going back to where officers had discretion, where the chief counsel, who is like the prosecutor for immigration, has discretion. Another thing where we're talking about setting the tone, they're referring to immigration laws as civil immigration laws, not as crimes. For so long, I would say since at least the 90s, we've been hammered with this. They're criminals and they're violating the laws and they're doing this and they're doing that. So now we see this backing off, and it's always been a civil proceeding. When you're in removal proceedings in immigration court, it's civil, it's not criminal. When you're detained, it's not punishment. It's just there to guarantee that you're going to show up to court. And the thing about this, that government's own statistics show that it is highly effective to use an ankle monitor, and we've got it in the budget. And Eduardo, you know how this works. If it's in the budget, it's use it or lose it. But the incentive has been these private detention centers and these profit-making detention centers.
Yeah, and also, sorry to interrupt, and I guess that would be one of the good things that they can use for those refugees that are staying in Mexico that want to come into the United States as refugees. Use that income, income monitor, and so because Mexico is not the safest place to be as a undocumented immigrant.
Yeah, that's the MPP program, and basically what we did was we converted, northern Mexico into a giant detention camp, and it's just the conditions there are horrific. I've got friends who are attorneys there on the border, and they're always asking for help. And I said, can we come down and help? She goes, don't do that. If you can help us remotely in doing an application, we prefer that, because for them to go into the camp, they have to have their own signals and stuff, because you never know when organized crime and cartels are going to come through. And when that happens, they have their signal, and they tell you, they instruct you, just drop your pen, drop what you got, get up, and go back across to the U.S. And so they've had rampant kidnappings, crimes of all kinds, in these centers. And it's not a center. I don't want it to sound like they're staying at the YMCA. Literally, it's self-made camps, and they may have porta potties, but the porta potties, basically they're having to clean their own porta potties with whatever water they can find. So the conditions are horrific. And if it were any other country doing this, we'd be sitting there criticizing them and asking the UN to do something about it. But because it's us, we tend to look the other way. So hopefully, he stopped putting people in the MPP program right now. That's ended. But those who are there right now continue to be there. And politically, I think the reason he's done that is because if we stop and we suddenly open the gates, the visual of that, would I think would politically hurt any ability to get any type of legislation passed that involved immigration reform. So
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I think it will be a political suicide if he did that. I think that's why they're starting gradually, like small numbers, like 300 and something or a day, or 125, 325 a day. And I think so. I think I read an article about it. But if they were just to open it and then all of them come in, it will be political suicide for him, for himself, if he tries to get reelected, or for any person from the Democratic Party to do that, to get elected in another year in office for presidency, next election.
Yeah. So yeah, but that, it's a horrible practice. I mean, don't get me wrong, but I understand, why we can't just cut it off and open the gates. I mean, because right now we've got thousands of people there, and there's still people there who have been processed, who were denied entering the United States, who are still stuck there because they can't go home. And we've got to be really concerned about the other caravans that have started to come, but somehow they've been stopped. And what are they experiencing that we're not covering, that we're not seeing, that they were able to stop them and keep them from getting out of the southern part of Mexico? Because remember, a lot of these people are fleeing abuse by gangs, by their own government, corrupt officials. So I think the Biden administration's approach to this, in terms of, hey, how do we use our aid to help these folks in their home country? Because not all of them are asylum seekers. Some of them are coming because they're desperate for work. They can't farm anymore because climate change has created drought where there used to be, fertile land. So what can we do to help them, to keep them home? They'd rather be home. If they can be home, they'd stay home. They don't want to leave their families. They don't want to leave their traditions and what they've grown up with. And bring their kids through that trek. So if they could, they would stay home.
Definitely. And there's a lot who would like to stay in their home country, and there will be better. But I think the way that we have seen from the news, some of the international news, is that they have been stopped by using military force from those nations, from Guatemala or Mexico. And who knows what? My assumption that they did it because of orders of the United States to stop the flow
Of course.
of the refugees and the Karens going into the northern border of the United States. But hopefully they realize that in order to stop that, they need to put money into those countries, or aid, and help them develop, so people have work or job in there. Eduardo, you have any other questions? I know you know more about immigration than I do.
Well, there is a lot of things that need to be done, and the bad thing about it is we don't have the community um, to drive some things a little bit harder into the political arena. And it's I know for a fact, based on what I saw personally, and I try to deal just with things that I personally or things that I had direct knowledge of. Majority of the people that were deported from 1990, 2003, 2004, a lot of them were married, and they would take their wives and their kids back to the other countries. What we fail to understand is we have hundreds of thousands of U.S. citizens living in these countries, and we don't even know where they're at.
Yeah.
And that is a big. They're probably on the caravans coming up here, thinking that they don't have documents and they're citizens. But nobody bothers to ask them the right questions to find out. And so the Department of State has dropped the ball on that. Immigration has dropped the ball on that. The Congress and the Senate have dropped the ball on that. And nobody to try to find out how many of these kids are out there. They're due their citizenship rights. They're due anything else like Medicaid, CHIP. All these things are available to them, and they're not being able to. But again, I've tried to bring our leadership in the LULAC community and La Raza and others to understand that this is something that we need to address. But it's hard because everybody has their own agenda, unfortunately, and they want to be able to get their pieces of pie. But they want to be in front of the camera, not behind the camera or behind the guy who's up there. So it makes it very difficult. When in reality, I got kids out there that need help.
Yeah.
Right now. They don't see that, and that bothers me a lot. But we'll get to a point, hopefully, once, especially here in Texas, once La Raza starts over a bigger chunk of the pie, so to speak, and we become more integrated into the leadership positions, maybe we can try again. Maybe we can start trying to reach out to those deals, because there's a lawsuit there waiting to happen. But I can't get around to understand that this is something that there are literally, in my opinion, I would say there's about 100,000 kids out there that are at the age of 18, old enough to vote, don't even know they're citizens.
Yep. And along those lines too, we got to talk about our veterans that have been deported. How many veterans do we have over there in Mexico now that we should have made them citizens? They should have been citizens, and we failed to do that. And these are people who actually saw combat, and they maybe a lot of them came back with issues, and unfortunately they don't get the help that they should get, that we owe them for serving our country, and instead they end up getting deported.
And that's another issue that we as LULAC we're trying to really deal with as well. And I agree with you, because in my opinion, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use the law. Using the law has always helped me out a lot. So in this particular case, what I'm trying to get the representatives to understand is that these veterans, even though they're deported, under the rules as they are, they still have a right to the VA.
Yeah.
And we are not allowing them to go and seek, that crucial benefit. Nowhere in the law does it say simply because a gentleman is not a U.S. citizen entitled to VA benefits. It doesn't say that. What it says, so long as you served X amount and you received a discharge that allows you to get these benefits, you're eligible for those benefits, period. Okay, so now, why don't we have in one of the embassies or one of the consulates down in Mexico, so they can attract that. But until we do, they have a right to come back.
Eduardo, I think you froze up, but yeah, I agree with you, man. You know, at least give them the ability to parole them into the United States so they can get medical treatment here.
Yes, I think Eduardo froze, man. Definitely. I mean, they fought for this nation. They served this nation.
Yeah.
And they're American. Got deported for XYZ reason, but they served the nation. They literally went and fought for it, and so they're veterans. I'm with Eduardo and with you, George. They need to be allowed to come back, and they need to be U.S. citizens at the end of the day.
Right. Absolutely. You know, and one of the things that, you know, we've kind of gotten away from, there's actually a program called MAVNI, MAVNI, Military Assistant Veterans, something. But the idea behind that is that people who don't have status, who sign up to the military and have special skills like language skills or, you know, maybe doctors or nurses and things that we need in the military, that they would, once they go through boot camp, then they would be naturalized, and we completely stopped doing that. And there were a lot of people that were caught in the pipeline just waiting to go. You know, we had doctors that we desperately need in the military, and they were there just cleaning scalpels, waiting to be put through boot camp so they could get their citizenship, and we just stopped completely the program, just froze it. And this country has always had a history of foreigners who have joined us in the military and fought for our country, and we've always rewarded them. And it's not giving them a lot when you consider that these people are sacrificing their lives and everything that they have to protect us and to protect our freedoms.
Yeah, definitely, and hopefully, our partner Eduardo, he being a member of LULAC, can do more and also in terms of politics, because one of the things that we realize and locally with some organizations is that they might not want to resolve problems.
I'm sorry, Ray.
Who are generally who are on some immigrant community for work permit or DACA. We have talked about those issues, and at some point they look at it at the issues that makes those people flee their nations to the states, and they put money for those nations once again, aid, and they also realize they need to change the immigration laws where it's not going to be possible to deport all those people who are undocumented in the states. They're not going to be able. The government is not going to be able to just, I guess, stop people in the streets and tell them, "Hey, do you have papers or you're undocumented? Oh, you're undocumented. Get on the bus. We're gonna send you to your country." Oh, not gonna be able. The government's not gonna be able to. We have to solve that problem, and hopefully they solve it soon with this administration.
Yeah, and it's not just about issues with enforcement. I mean, people need to understand that these immigrants contribute to our economy. Our economy would go nowhere if it weren't for immigrants. And one of the things, like for instance, using DACA as an example, I've got clients that are DACA recipients who are doctors, nurses, healthcare providers, engineers, professors, lawyers. I got a friend who's a lawyer who's DACA, and he goes, "Man, I got somebody else a green card, and I still don't have one." You know? And they're contributing to our society. We've got bilingual teachers, over 2,000 in the state of Texas, who are DACA recipients. You know, what happens if we lose all of them? You know, and look at how they've contributed to our country. And these are people who have never committed a crime because they couldn't get DACA if they did. Even, as a matter of fact, in the Trump administration, even if they were charged with a crime, even if they were innocent, they'd revoke the DACA. So, you know, it's not just DACA recipients. I mean, it's a lot of immigrants who are here, especially our agricultural workers, our ranchers. You know, the American cowboy is not John Wayne. It's a Mexicano from Chihuahua, you know, who's raising the cattle and that we eat, the beef that we eat, right? So people need to understand, Americans need to understand how vital and how critical it is to have these people here. And you know what? Make them legal, and they're going to be paying taxes. They're going to be paying into Social Security. A lot of them have just on blind faith and not knowing whether they'll ever receive any benefit from the Social Security that they've paid or from the taxes that they've paid, but they do it. And I think it's a wrong negative, a wrong narrative that is put out there that, you know, that because they're here unlawfully, that they're not paying taxes and they're not paying Social Security. Ray, I think that
Having problems with the Wi-Fi
yeah,
in my end or the internet. There's a lot of immigrants.
I think you froze up there. Well, I guess while we're waiting for Ray to come back, he's having some Wi-Fi issues. If anybody has any questions, you can post your questions.
Yes. I'm back. I
Are you
apologize.
back?
I think
All
I
right.
think I was having problems with the internet and the Wi-Fi. Yeah. So what the comment that you made, there's a lot of people who and like you mentioned and documented community, they don't pay.
Right.
And when you tell them, well, there's data that shows that, and there's a price, and the counter argument is that they're not legal. But the point that whenever you're talking to them is that they tell you they're not paying their taxes. Once you tell them that those who are opposed, given the status of those, their immediate thought, oh well, they're not legal.
Well, and people forget that they're consumers.
Oh, they consumers, they pay taxes, and also their purchasing power, the Hispanic purchasing power, is very big.
Absolutely. You know, and one of the things that
It's
really
its own economy. And go ahead, George. I
well,
apologize.
no, it's fine. No. I was just going to say, you know, one of the things that, you know, that pissed me off is that, you know, they look at them as, oh my gosh, I'm not going to have my lawn cut or my house cleaned. It goes way beyond that. I mean, we're talking about professionals. We're talking about skilled workers. You know, we're talking about things that we need in our country to keep our economy moving. You know, business owners, whether it's small business or large business. I've got a client right now who's a multimillionaire and has no status, and he has multiple businesses, and he's just, I mean, anything he touches, it turns into gold. The only thing is, we're still fighting to try and get him a green card, and it shouldn't be that way. You know, it for people who are going to come and are going to be productive and are going to contribute to our country and are going to contribute to our economy, it shouldn't be that hard. It just doesn't make sense. The other countries don't make it that hard. You know.
It's definitely. And do you have we know that for the public, for people in Illinois and who that have a heavy Hispanic population, can you tell me what's the importance of their power that they have, the purchasing power that they for them to help their brothers who are at some point you were running for office, the importance of registering to vote, going out and voting, and the impacts that it has directly to immigration by elected officials who are.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that before we got on air that we were talking about is how is it that in the state like this with the population that we don't have a Latino as governor or lieutenant governor or attorney general, right? It is so critical if we really want to see changes, if we want to see a better America, especially for our community. Those who are U.S. citizens have got to register to vote, and they have to vote, and they have to vote in every election. And it is important to have people that look like us, that think like us, that have our experience in leadership positions. And that's why I ran, because I thought it was important, somebody who actually knew something about immigration to be dealing with immigration in Congress. Because one of the things that was frustrating to me, it seemed like the Democrats didn't know a thing about immigration. It was all the Republicans, they knew how to mess it up. And nobody was stopping them. But and it's not just immigration, it's everything. It's really helping our community help itself. And really, we were both members of the National Hispanic Institute, and the philosophy is becoming an investor beneficiary in our own community, and expanding our capacities. So that when we start to look at it that way, and when we start to put people into positions that understand that, we're going to see a huge change in our country for the better, and we'll see a big change for our community as well.
Definitely. George mentioned something. Senor Rodriguez, he mentioned something very important. As the National Hispanic Institute is a very, very awesome institute. They have very awesome programs. I went to the Lorenzo de Zavala, and that made me a better person myself, and also knowing the political things in the political arena and how to engage issues, problems when it comes to trying to make things better. And put it honest, my knowledge that I got throughout college was good, but me going to the Lorenzo de Zavala made me more aware of the system that how local government functions, how the state government functions. Without me knowing that, I probably wouldn't be the person that I am today, politically wise and community wise, because I wouldn't know how to engage my elected officials. I wouldn't be able to call my state rep and tell them, "Hey, there's a problem going on in my community. You need to resolve it." And if they told me, "Hey, I'm not able to resolve it," well, guess what? You can draft a bill. You can present it. You can go negotiate with some of them, and hopefully you get it passed. So I learned a lot by going to the Lorenzo and Zavala program, and back then it was Georgetown and by Austin in the university. So it was a really, really awesome program. Yes, and also my younger sister also went. So if you have kids who are Hispanic and even non-Hispanic, I encourage them to go to Lorenzo de Zavala. Maybe you can provide more information on that, George.
Yeah, if you'd like more information, you can always go to the website, which is www.nationalhispanicinstitute.org. And you can get more information. And NHI is all throughout the state of Texas and throughout the U.S. And we also have a program in Panama and then the Dominican Republic. So we've gone international. And, we produce, the kids come in with the skills and the abilities. We just polish it, and so we ended up with people like yourself. There in Houston, you got Lina Hidalgo, who's an NHIer. We've got Congresswoman Ocasio, and so that's what we want. That's what we want to polish. I see them as kids because, to me, they're always kids, but, and we want them in our community, helping our community and doing right by our community. because the last thing we want is people that have the same color of skin that we do get elected and turn their backs on us. We want people who look up to the community, not people who are looking down on our community. That's what we want in leaders.
Yes, definitely, and it's a really really awesome program. I recommend it. So you can, like I said, if there's kids that want to join, that's a good program. You learn a lot. The government, sure, and that's coming from me that I've been involved quite some years now, since I was in high school all the way to now after college, and now that I have a professional life. You learn a lot more, sometimes more than that you learn from school about how government works. You become more aware, and so yes, and hopefully those leaders that are coming up, those leaders throughout the years, they become elected officials like Ocasio Cortez, Lina Hidalgo, who are former members of NHI, still members of NHI. Once an alumni, you're once a member. How is that? Once part of NHI, you're always
Siempre eres parte de la familia.
there you go. There you go. So yes. So hopefully those leaders run for office again, others, and they get elected, and we have more representation of the Hispanic Latino community. So that therefore the issues that we suffer, that the things that we go through, that other ethnicity or races do not know, the issues that we go through. Once those people get elected, they are able to resolve them, or they're able to put a stop to some of those things that happen. And who knows? Our community is growing, and it's constantly growing. Our population is becoming, I think, by mid this year, we're gonna be the highest population here in the state of Texas. So hopefully, there's a person who decides to run for governor, a Hispanic, and hopefully we all can join and support him, and we see a change.
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
And it's going to take people like you doing things like this and getting information out. That's important. So I really appreciate being on your podcast and the work that you're doing. And I wish you the best. And I'm very proud of you. It's kind of, it's like I said, you're always kids to me, because you guys come, and now I get to see you doing things like this, which makes an impact in the community. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, he said something very important. Whenever we're kids, we're scared of, like, whenever we're kids, sometimes we are scared of talking, and those programs that NHI has, they make you a good public speaker. It takes away that fear, I guess. Because of that, I'm able to be here in our show and being able to talk in front of the camera. Before we end the community advisors or sort of show today, the podcast, I would like to, if you have any final comments, or maybe something that you want to tell the community before to our viewers.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is, with the changes that we see coming in immigration, going back to the theme of immigration, my advice is, if you know somebody who may qualify, this is the time to start gathering proofs of how long they've been here. Make sure you pay your taxes. Make sure you go to a credible tax preparer. If you're married, and living together, you shouldn't be filing as head of household, or filing separately, not claiming to be married, things like that. Make sure that, your paperwork is done correctly. School transcripts are always great to prove, physical presence here, along with your tax returns. And, because a lot of times we can't even use your check stubs if you don't have a valid Social Security number. So things like that help a lot. Bank accounts, letter from the bank saying you've been had an account there for so many years, and things like that. So start getting everything together. If you have DACA, maintain your status. If you don't have DACA, apply for DACA now. I think one of the things, if we don't get anything, I think one of the things that has the best chance of passing is the DREAM Act. And I'm hoping that maybe people who have TPS, temporary protective status, and our agricultural workers will also get, status as well, become residents, because, they really deserve that. But again, if you've got DACA, keep it up. Don't let it go. Even if you're in the process of fixing, I always tell my clients, even until you get that green card in your hand, you keep that DACA, because we never know what could happen, right? There could be a delay, something gets lost, those things.
Awesome. Yes, definitely. And where can people contact you? And if they have an immigration case, or they want to contact you because they want to, since you're one of the best attorneys in the state of Texas and in the nation, where can they contact you?
So they can call the office at 214-637-5700, or they can also look at our website, which is www.s like Sam, R like Robert, A like Apple, lawonline.com.
Awesome.
So like,
Definitely.
yeah, it's funny because the firm is SRA Law, Sainz Rodriguez and Associates, right? So my wife's plate says SRA Law, and people are like, "Dang, Senora Law." No, it's SRA Law.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining us today,
Thank you.
George. And thank you for coming here and talking to the Latino community and those who are non-Hispanic and Latinos who want to learn about immigration. And thank you so much. And hopefully we're able to see you again here at Community Advisors. And whenever you have any comments or anything that you want to present to the public, you're welcome to come and present it. We're always here for you, and we know that you serve the community a lot, and all the work that you do, it's amazing for here in the state of Texas and outside.
Thank you. All right. Good night.
Good night.